Hello, friends. How are we doing? I can't believe we're actually on the last Hakuoki route. Like, for realsies. It's weird. It's so weird. Sounds fake. I know. I mentioned it to Dylan and he didn't believe me. So, you know. We've been at this for a very long time. I know, right? That seems likely. All right, I have my tea awaiting for me, so I am going to go get that. And then I think we'll be ready to start. Oh, I should get the walkthrough up too. That is correct. As my voice dies. We have Soma's DLC and Kazuma's DLC, which we somehow missed like 2 fucking years ago, or however long ago it was we did his route. I think it's been 2 years at this point. Because he was like, was he the second route we did? Holy shit. Anyway, we have those 2 DLC to knock out of the way to completely finish that off. And then it's all Hijikata. And all tragedy, and all sads, and stuff, because, of course, with Hijikata we get to see the end of the Shinsengumi, more or less. Not as much of it as we did with Soma, but, you know. Maybe they fixed it. Maybe they went with the stuff they did in the movie and it won't suck. I'm not gonna, like, assume that the blood drinking scenes are gonna be worth anything because we know better at this point. Oh, technically we also have Yukimura's path, which is a route with no choices. It's just some weird solo route that's probably really sad. I don't know. We'll probably do, once we actually finish Hijikata's route, we might do a stream where we just finish up odds and ends, like get some CGs we're missing and things like that by skipping around. Because once you have the, like, warrior record, you can go to any chapter you want. And don't mind me, I am just hunting for the walkthrough. There we go. Whew, we got 5 heckin' chapters with this boy. We're just gonna kill that real quick. Jump on over and get rolling. We ready? Here we go. It's really weird not jumping back to Kyoto Winds. It's very confusing. It's fine though. Okay. Let's do those DLC. Goodest boy or worstest boy first? Oh, and apparently we get a Hijikata one here too. Thank you for the host, Len. Worstest first? Okay. Yeah, we should end the DLC on a good note, huh? Alright, let's get this over with. Brace for Kenjiro Tsuda voice? Also, hell if I remember what sequence of events really even happened in that route. I think I blocked half of it from my memory. So, this is just going to be very random.
Sendai was warm and temperate on this summer's eve, and we were still struggling to find a vessel to bring us to Ezo and reunite with the Shinsengumi.
戻ったぞ、雪村の娘。
I feel like
夕飯の支度はできているのだろうな。
I feel like maybe we saw this. I wonder if it just didn't, like, register somehow. Oh well, we'll see what happens.
Yes, give me a moment. I'll prepare it at once.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know if it's the same scene or if that was in the main game, or I don't remember. Anyway.
What are you laughing about in there?
以前のお前は人に懐かぬ野良猫のようなありさまだったが。近頃ようやく未来の夫への敬意が芽生えてきたと見える。
Can we slap his face? That'd be awesome.
Whose husband?
お前は好意も持っておらぬ男のために飯炊きをするのが趣味なのか?
Actually, yes. Pretty much. Yeah.
Well, no, I didn't say that. I'm merely returning a courtesy since you were so generous in taking me in. I decided to handle the housework. It's an exchange.
そういえば、お前は長い間新選組の連中のために飯炊きや掃除などのくだらぬ雑務をこなしていたのだったな。
Glad we cleared that up. Could you not call it servant work, you terrible, terrible man? Hi, Cassie!
まったく、誇り高き純潔の女鬼を下働きとしてこき使うなど。
Sure.
あの時代錯誤の犬どもは100回殺しても殺し足りぬな。
Duct tape. No, but then we wouldn't get to hear his voice. It's not that he talks, it's the problem that is the problem. It's what he says that's the problem. We need to teach him new words. He just needs a script. That's what he needs. And yes, he does have a point, but it is very badly communicated.
All right, don't say that. Don't be rude.
いいからさっさと用意をしろ。俺は空腹で気が立っているのだ。
I almost want to call editing shenanigans on this. I hope that's true. That's also a good plan.
Okay, pushy. I mean, he's the one who entered the room and began speaking combatively to me. His pompousness knew no limits, and I scoffed in the other room. Although I was grateful for his hospitality, when he got into these aggressive moods, I felt inclined to give him a taste of his own medicine.
Yeah, like, I could see this behavior being on brand, but they kind of made the words suck more. Also, you are correct, Cassie. I appreciate that Chizuru's not, like, just taking this quietly. Or at least she's at least thinking bad things, even if she's not saying bad things.
Apologies for keeping you waiting, Kazuma. Here you go. I set down a tray of pickled plums, grilled fish, rice, and soup in front of him. Ah! I snagged my foot on the mat and tripped before spilling the tray's contents on the floor.
危ない
Well, at least he caught her, I guess. Yes, this version of Kazuma is a hypocrite. Of the worst order.
Kazuma had caught my body as I fell in his direction, but... The miso soup, which had still been scalding, splashed onto the back of my hand.
大丈夫か見せてみろ
It's all right. It's a little burn, but if I put a cold compress on it, the swelling will reduce.
冷やしておけば治るだと
Do you not understand basic medicine? Oh boy.
お前は一体どこまで粗骨なのだ禅を運ぶときはきちんと足元を見ろ
Why are you being such a jerk? It's not like I spent all that time in the kitchen just to drop the food and piss you off.
Whoa.
自ら望んで怪我をする者がどこにいるというのだお前はただの人間の娘ではないのだぞこの日の元にも数えるほどしか残っておらぬ誇り高き純潔の女鬼なのだその身を不注意で傷つけるなど
I guess this is supposed to read like kind of overprotective in an endearing way, but also that's bullshit. Anyway.
なんだその顔はこの俺の現に誤りでもあるというのか
Yes.
Stop me if I'm wrong, but... Is this just your way of telling me that you're concerned about me? Kazuma furrowed his brow deep enough to hide himself inside of it.
That's true. He really doesn't need to understand basic first aid because he'll heal in like seconds. And he probably doesn't get hurt that much because he's at least decently good at what he does. But he's also still a bastard.
雪村家の棟梁筋の鬼たる者がくだらぬ問いを口にするな
Are you being tsundere with us now?
この禅は俺が片付けておくお前はその火傷を冷やしてこい
Oh.
なんだまだ気になることでもあるのか
Oh, no. Thank you, Kazuma.
俺はお前の親ではないいつでもこうして世話を焼いてやれると思うな
Yeah, generally speaking, that is true in the game. Or at least in the remakes. He was a bit better in the original in his route, but I've yelled about that enough times over the years.
With that, Kazuma lifted all of the dishes into his arms and stormed into the kitchen. While his sarcastic tone of voice had rubbed me the wrong way tonight, he had his own way of showing how much he cared.
Did he?
From now, I suppose it was worth it for me to take better care of myself, if not just for my sake.
How? That sure happened. Anyway, on to Soma. Yeah, at least we got that over with. I too miss the old Kazuma, and also movie, Kazuma. Yeah, that was DLC. Ugh. Ugh. Bleh.
Goryokaku was buzzing with boorish cheers, the clinking of glass and the shuffling of feet, all culminating into one cacophonous celebration. President Enomoto had organized the last-minute festivities in honor of the recent election, and I was given a new assignment as Soma's page. Some men, of course, had gone a little overboard. Soma, are you going to make it? Just hang on, we've almost made it back to the room.
大丈夫です。俺一人で歩けますから。
Oh no, buddy, are you drunk?
Soma had been quick to respond, but... Hey, watch out! He stepped through the hallway clumsily, knocking into the walls as he swayed back and forth.
すみません。迷惑をかけてしまって。
Hey, don't be so hard on yourself. I'm your page now, Soma. This is what I'm here for.
その言い方はやめてください。事例に異を唱えるつもりはありませんけど、俺、先輩より上だなんて思ってませんから。
I rushed to support his weight as he struggled to stand, putting his arm around my shoulders as I led him back to the bedroom. Here's some water, Soma.
ありがとうございます。
How are you feeling? Nauseous? Do you have a headache?
大丈夫です。静かにしていれば、そのうち酔いも覚めますから。
Okay, happy to hear. I knew leaving you unattended would be troublesome. I saw the kind of liquor that Iba was pouring.
Iba! You gremlin!
I'll have to have a discussion with him in the future about what it means to drink responsibly.
いいんですよ。伊庭さんの気持ちは、俺にもよくわかりますから。
Oh, Soma, you sweet summer child.
Huh?
もし俺が彼の立場だったら、同じことをしてしまったかもしれません。子供の頃から好きだった人を、いきなり出てきた冴えない男に取られてしまったら。
Oh. Alright. Well, Soma's smarter than he looks sometimes. Yes, exactly. Like, Iba is sweet and loving and absolutely darling, but he has as much gremlin energy as Soji. It's just hidden.
嫉妬して意地悪をしてしまうのも無理はないですよね。
Oh, buddy.
You aren't a total nobody, Soma.
雪村先輩、そんな俺に気を使わなくても。
I'm not trying to. It's how I actually feel. I've gotten to know who you are from the inside, Soma. That's why, when you confessed your true feelings for me, I felt butterflies in the pit of my stomach. Prior to us meeting, Soma's journey as a warrior was fraught with confusion and longing, and he wandered aimlessly for someone to give him purpose. Hearing him think so lowly of himself after all that he had overcome made my heart feel so heavy. But in spite of those hardships, the two of us had found each other. And now here we were.
先輩。
His cheeks filled with blush, and he swiftly averted his gaze away from me. Although, it was equally likely that he was red-faced from the countless drinks he had downed. He moved sluggishly, lying limp on the bed. Then he interrupted my internal musings with,
本当は今日気持ちを伝えるつもりじゃなくて、もっともっと努力して先輩に釣り合うような男になれた時言うつもりだったんですけど。
Soma. He was selfless. Drunk, too, to be sure. And sincere. And I took his words as heavy praise. I find you to be a truly remarkable man.
先輩がそう言ってくれても俺の気が済まないんです。
Yeah, Soma, your imposter syndrome is... Whew. Boy. We need to prop you up some more, kid.
でも本意じゃなかったとしてもきっと今日気持ちを伝えたことに意味があるんでしょうね。
Yes, I agree. Our travels to Ezo were dogged with trouble and grief at every step. But part of dealing with grief was accepting that things had happened, not what could have been. Time spent together was precious. Of all the great fortuitous things that had happened since our arrival in Ezo, the best was hearing how much Soma had cared about me. As my eyes began to fill with tears,
好きです、雪村先輩。
Wow! It's only a DLC and I am filled with feelings.
Soma blurted out of the blue and my heart fell into a bed of clouds beside the crescent moon. Where did that come from? The suddenness of his outburst caused a rush of blood to my head, and he turned to look away from me sheepishly.
さっきは土方さんがいてきちんと気持ちを伝えることができませんでしたから、今日のうちに言っておかなきゃいけないと思って。
Soma. His lips formed a wry smile, rendering me speechless. Words escaped me as I had no idea what could possibly compare to his. For a while, our eyes were locked together and we basked in the silence.
すみません、俺眠くなってきました。先輩、先に広間に戻っていてください。
But
俺のことなら大丈夫です。多分一眠りすれば酔いも覚めますし、それにこのまま先輩と二人きりだと理性が持つかどうかわからないですから。
I picked up Soma's implication and I dropped my eyes to the ground. Things were beginning to escalate. After having confessed our true feelings for one another, there was no telling what boundaries were there for us to break. But now was not the time to ask ourselves that question, so I did as he said. Very well. Understood. I'll see you tomorrow then, okay? Part of me had wished to lie in that bed next to him, but I left it at that and slid the door behind me.
That's how you do DLC. That was beautiful. All right. I feel soundly absolved of the garbage that was Kazuma's DLC, so let's carry on to Hijikata's route. And there he be. It was so sweet. God, Soma is so good. We'll just get our prologue out of the way to recap ourselves on Kyoto Winds, which we've seen like 80,000 times by this point. Yeah, so we know the drill. She goes to Kyoto. Oh no, scary dudes murdering things. White hair, crimson eyes. Yay, we got saved by Saito and Okita and also Hijikata, and then they basically took us hostage. Oh no. Because, you know, they were also searching for dear old dad. We become Hijikata's page. Giant air quotes. Stuff happens. More stuff happens. Hijikata's a cool dude. We pine after him a whole lot. He's mostly just doing his job. These assholes show up, try to kidnap us many a time. Turns out we're a demon. Oh no. Then the Battle of Toba Fushimi happens and everything goes to shit and Gen dies and we're sad. Yeah. Hakuoki pining wins, yes. Hijikata does a really badass thing toward the end there and protects Chizuru by just chugging the water of life, giving 0 fucks, and a badass speech, and then beat the shit out of Kazuma. Or at least held his own against him for a change. But then we all had to bail because the Satsuma and Choshu were still winning the war, and that was a problem. And off we go on a boat to Edo. And here we are. Achievement unlocked. Would it kill you to smile? Oh dear. So that's the achievement we get for starting Hijikata's route, I believe.
After arriving in Edo, we stayed at the Kama Inn, which was located in Shinagawa and had normally been designated for Hatamoto exclusively. A recent attempt on Kondo's life required that he and Okita, who had contracted tuberculosis, were to stay with Dr. Matsumoto to treat their conditions. Losing the Battle of Toba Fushimi and Osaka Castle, and Lord Yoshinobu, the Supreme Commander, retreating. The fate of the Shinsengumi grew bleaker, and troops began openly voicing their doubts and concerns.
近藤局長はいつ戻られるんだ。もしや慶喜公のように我々を見捨てて逃げてしまうのではあるまいな。
Wow, that's mean. Although, given Yoshinobu was the shogun and he fucking bailed, yeah, I can see why they might think so.
そんなことあるはずないです。
The good boy!
余計な心配をしてる暇があるなら言いつけられた仕事をしましょう。
Soma was the one to speak against the naysayers. Normally, such insubordination was met with harsh reprimanding, if not more. But things had changed.
てめえら、おしゃべりが過ぎるぜ。暇でしょうがねえんなら、刀の手入れでもしてたらどうだ。
申し訳ございません。
It wasn't just the tempers of the soldiers that were fraying. Nagakura and the others were just as tense. Harada watched the two men scurry off and sighed.
まあ、あいつらの気持ちもわからなくはねえかな。戦になった途端、総大将が真っ先に逃げ出しちまうなんて前代未聞だ。
Fair point.
しょうがねえさ。あの人はもともと尊上派の急先鋒、水戸藩の生まれだろ。薩長の奴らが掲げた錦の御肌にすくんじまったんだろうぜ。敵から見るとあんな御しやすい大将もねえよな。
So the gold brocade flag, as pictured, is the official flag of the Imperial Army. And that was the thing that the Satsuma Choshu used to declare their allegiance, which I think I mentioned during the Sakamoto route. After doing a little bit of reading and digging, it turns out that one of the guys on either the Satsuma or the Choshu side like had this banner prepared weeks in advance. Bold fucking move.
尊上派だろうが砂漠派だろうが関係ねえよ。命かけて戦ってる家来を見捨てて逃げ出すなんざ腰抜け以外の何者でもねえ。
There's Sano being great again. Anyway, the ones who support the shogunate are loyalists. I just love it when Sano is salty. Yeah, exactly. The Emperor didn't have that much pull. It was really just the court around him that was manipulating the fuck out of things. Because the Emperor at that time, Emperor Meiji, was a kid. I just love it when Sano agree.
この先一体どうなってしまうんでしょうか。
近藤さんは怪我で伏せってる。薩長と戦うにも刃物じゃ銃にはかなわねえ。八方塞がりだな。
Nagakura sighed, letting his shoulders slump. If the men under you are willing to give their lives for your cause, then morale can always be raised. No matter what odds you may be up against. But Yoshinobu, in spite of this, chose to retreat. Then, what were the Shinsenkumi supposed to fight for? What were they supposed to do?
お先真っ暗だよな。あれこれ考えても落ち込むだけだし、吉原にでも遊びに行くか。
吉原ですか。この時期に。
バカ野郎、この時期だからこそ永久を養わなきゃならねえんじゃねえか。
Oh, Nagakura, always a party boy.
そういえば斉藤さんは一体どこに？最近姿を見かけないんですけど。
Nomura asked aloud, glancing around the room.
斉藤なら怪我人や病人の様子を見るため松本先生のところに出かけてるみたいだぜ。
But is he checking on Soji?
なるほど。
Winning the next battle was of utmost importance. I knew everyone was giving everything they had, but memories of the peaceful times back in Kyoto were like a candle flickering in the wind, one breath away from darkness. Sometimes I wondered if those memories really happened at all.
Well, that was depressing.
One day, an unexpected guest had visited the Kama Inn.
こんにちは。ご無沙汰してます。
Iba! What up? And we don't really know him that well in this one.
Oh, I believe you were Iba, wasn't it?
Anyway, we know who he is. He's a good boy.
はい。トシさんに用事があってきました。取り次いでくれますか？
Sure. Please wait a moment.
Fox, hello!
Sometime after I led Iba to Hijikata's room, murmurs of conversation suddenly became exclamations.
Anyway, yo! There's our mans. Number one prettiest guy route going. We just started. We were getting some DLC out of the way. Kazuma's DLC was legitimately horrible, and Soma's DLC was perfect.
なんだと。そいつは本当か？
はい。何でも急に外せない用事が入ったとのことで。
今日こそは何としても話を聞いてもらわなきゃ始まらねえ。ちと出かけてくる。
Bye?
And with that, Hijikata stormed out of the room in a fit. He looked awful when I had come in. Really, all I could hope for is that he'd be all right. Did something happen?
今日面会する予定の幕臣の方に約束を保護にされそうになっていたので知らせに来たんです。
Iba, you're a good bro.
Hijikata had been attempting to gather shogunate support to launch another campaign against the Satsuma Choshu by meeting with shogunate leaders. However, the unwillingness of the shogunate leaders to entertain Hijikata's desperate initiative means... Do you think the shogunate doesn't want to fight against the imperial army anymore?
何しろ総大将の慶喜公が新政府軍に恭順してしまっていますからね。
Right? God, that would have been the worst.
僕も不用意な行動は慎むようにと上から言われていますし、こういう時は思うままに行動できるトシさんたちのことが少し羨ましいです。
Aw. You can come hang out with us, Iba.
それじゃあ僕はそろそろおいとまします。皆さん方によろしく伝えてください。
Oh, sure, of course. I'm sorry that I couldn't offer you more courtesy in your stay. Shortly after Iba had left Kama Inn, a familiar figure approached to ask me something.
雪村君、副長は中にいらっしゃいますか？
Welcome to Hijikata's route, where we hang out with literally everyone but Hijikata. We go on as we began.
Oh, you just missed him. He stepped out. Did you have business with him?
本当ですか？江戸に戻ってきてからというもの、獅子奮迅の働きぶりですね。
I know. I seriously wonder how he finds the time to sleep, if at all. As far as I knew, Hijikata should have been suffering in agonizing pain during the daylight hours because of his condition as a fury. However, seeing him work as tirelessly as he does, one would have no clue of his affliction at all. Shimada, are you okay? You look a little more gaunt than usual, like you've lost some weight.
まあ、山崎君が亡くなって仕事が増えましたからね。
That's right. Yamazaki died on the boat ride over. Fuck.
彼の置き土産ですから、多少きつくてもなんとかこなさないと。
Oh, Shimada, you were good.
それに、あれだけ働いてらっしゃる副長を見ていたら、俺一人休むなんて到底できませんよ。
I suppose. I knew how Shimada felt, but he was actually in a position to contribute. Unlike Shimada, there was nothing I could do for Hijikata, even though I yearned to be involved and do whatever I could to help him. The day he died, Inoue had told me that while I might not be much help to the Shinsengumi as a warrior, there were other ways that I might be of service. But what could I do for them? I'd thought about that every day since Inoue and Yamazaki had died, but I had yet to think of what it was that I could do.
それじゃあ、俺は他にも用事があるので出かけてきます。
Oh, yes, of course. Please be careful.
そうそう。最近辻斬りが増えているらしいですからね。夜の外出は控えてください。
Yikes.
Okay. Shimada nodded, then he lifted himself heavily to his feet and left. Later that night, I was waiting in the empty common room for the captains to return. I sat idly, twirling my hands and my fingers when I saw...
Yo, Chizuru. こんばんは。
It's just the good boy procession, I guess. We love a Heisuke.
Oh, Heisuke. Where's everyone else?
新八さんと佐野さんなら大使を連れて吉原に遊びに行っちまったよ。で、俺が留守番させられてるってわけ。
Oh my god, rude.
俺あの人たちの使いっ走りでもなんでもねえんだけどな。雑用押し付けられても困っちまうぜ。
Heisuke is having all the FOMO right now. Don't blame him, though.
まあ、以前と変わらない扱いをしてくれるっていうのは嬉しいけどさ。
Oh, buddy.
His laugh sounded small and lonely in the empty hall. Oh, that reminds me. Do you know where Sannan is? Did he go somewhere?
三男さんなら見回りだってさ。
Patrol? But we're not in Kyoto anymore. No one's asked us to keep the peace in Edo. Why is he still doing it? Heisuke's face turned solemn, as if he were quietly searching for words while I waited in front of him. And then...
最近、三男さんの様子がおかしいんだ。
Ruh-roh.
今日も夜になってからいきなり見回りしてきますなんて言い出して。俺も一緒に行くって言ったんだけど、一人で平気だって言われちまってさ。
This is definitely not fine.
Oh. Well, I heard that there have been a lot of killings at night recently. Maybe he went out to see if he could learn anything about that. He might not have the same authority that he had in Kyoto, but the Shinsengumi still worked for the shogunate.
Yeah, that's a little sus, ain't it? A lot of killings at night. Sannan goes out at night. Sannan likes blood. A lot.
Perhaps Sannan was simply trying to protect Edo, regardless of whether he'd been asked to or not.
ならいいんだけどな。
Chizuru's like, I'm sure he's protecting the town from all the murders. Never mind, he's definitely shown up in her room with a fucking sword ready to cut her open for blood. Chizuru, you are a very forgiving soul.
Heisuke didn't really sound like he actually thought it was, however. Oh, Hijikata! Welcome back!
なんだ、まだ起きてやがったのか。
You know, it probably is.
His face was still pale, but his tone was sharp.
Chi! You are correct, Cassie. Isn't it horrible that one of the kanji I remember off the top of my head is the one for blood? It's fine.
As I watched, I realized that he was only barely standing. He shook just slightly as he moved, and I got the feeling that if he let his concentration slip even a little, he would simply collapse.
Oh my god, Fox. Yeah, that's it, doctor work.
His legs wobbled underneath his kimono and he curled his lips bitterly. There was something wrong, but what should I say?
Hijikata doesn't like people telling him what to do, and he doesn't like being mother hen, even though he is a mother hen himself. So, we ask if there's anything we can do.
Is there anything I can do to help? I knew what the answer would be, but I couldn't help asking.
ねえよ。余計な気を回さず、おとなしくしてろ。
Hijikata, let us help you! He really is. Cassie, that's rude. That's so mean. Bless Hijikata and his awkward haiku.
Oh, I see. Even though everyone else was working themselves to the bone, barely sleeping or eating, all I could do was sit around, useless.
おい。だからいちいち辛気臭い顔をすんのはやめろ。
I'm sorry. I realized as my words came out that I'd only made things worse, and apologizing would make me sound more miserable. That wasn't good at all. I needed to be more cheerful. If I couldn't help, the least I could do was not bring everyone down.
余計な心配はいらねえから、とりあえず茶でも入れてこい。お前の入れる茶は悪くねえからな。
Thanks? That's like the most backhanded of compliments, Hijikata, but cool, I guess.
Okay, I'll be right back. I ran off to the kitchen with a grin on my face. Hijikata's words cheered my mood, even if just a bit.
土方さんってさ、なんだかんだ言って、あいつには甘いよな。
Heisuke's like, I see through you, dude.
うるせえ。
Chizuru Yukimura, maker of Not That Bad Tea.
Hey, Wall. Here you go. I could only find some Rakugan to go with the tea, but...
What are Rakugan? A dried confectionery made with rice paste, sugar, and starch syrup, which is then colored and shaped into bite-sized portions. That sounds nummy. I want some.
Come on, 飲んだらすぐ仕事に戻らなきゃならねえからな。
Hijikata, please take a nap.
そんなに働いて大丈夫なのか？羅刹になっちまったんなら夜だけ働いた方がいいんじゃねえの？
Hijikata didn't answer, instead choosing to sip his tea and sit in silence for a long, drawn-out moment.
Alright, y'all are making me need to look up Rakugan. Hold on a second. I want to see Rakugan desu. They're so cute! Although they kind of remind me, and this is terrible, you know those like in terrible department store gift sets that like your grandma would probably find? They're the little soaps that are in cute shapes. They look like that. But they are cute. Man, I might have to try and find some. And I also definitely just accidentally closed my walkthrough browser. Hold on. Yes, novelty soaps. Thank you. I was like trying to find the words. I was just like, oh my god, those look tasty, and then I was like, no, actually, they look like soap. Right? If I go to Japan, I'm just gonna spend the entirety of my time there eating. Alright, lemma put this away. Okay, I got the walkthrough back up. We are good! Taiyaki stands will fear me! I just, you know, after I made that life-changing Japanese curry the other night, I just want more food. Give more. Anyway.
Osaka 城から引き上げるときにな、近藤さんに言われたんだ。
I did order that that box of golden curry off of Amazon for probably too much money, but I really wanted to try it, so I didn't care. But I'm probably gonna look and see if I can find a Asian grocer that I can get it from cheaper.
Oh, yummy.
I threw a whole ass Fuji apple grated into that curry and like hot honey, and it was amazing. Do recommend.
もし自分が大将だったら、たとえ兵士が2、300人になっちまっても、大坂城に立てこもって、とことんまで戦って、最後は腹を切って武士の生き様を見せつけてやるのにってな。
Oof. Hijikata, that was intense.
肩に弾食らって寝込んでるあの人がそこまで行ってる時に具合が悪いからって俺だけ休んでられねえだろ。
Buddy. Taking a break is healthy though.
The prospect of handing over a fully functioning Shinsengumi to his friend brought a gleam in his eye.
That seems like a extra line. The copywriting continues to be a mess. Anyway. Yeah, he slams the water of life to kick Kazuma's ass. It's actually really good. He basically has this like moment, this epic speech of like, I am so fucking done with all of this and all of you, and I don't give a fuck anymore. And then he proceeds to fight Kazuma. Wow.
If the rest of the men worried because their chief was wounded by a coward's bullet, Hijikata was buoyed by the simple fact that Kondo was alive, and that he had the courage to do what other leaders would not. He finished his tea quickly and returned to his room with only perfunctory thanks. Yesterday, his light had stayed on late into the night. Today would likely be no different.
でもさ、きついのはきっとこれからだぜ。
You are not wrong, Heisuke.
土方さんはまだ羅刹になったばっかで、吸血衝動は出てないみたいだからな。
Bloodlust scene in 3, 2.
Bloodlust?
羅刹になるとな、血を飲みたくて仕方なくなっちまうんだよ。剣の稽古で思いっきりぶったたかれるのなんか比べ物にならねえくらい苦しくて、いっそ殺してくれって思うくらいだもんな。
Phew. That is a way to describe how agonizing it apparently is.
Oh no.
Grant! Hello. Welcome. How was Armello?
Hijikata already looked terrible. If unbearable pain were suddenly added to his list of many burdens. Is there any way to do anything about it?
血を飲めば嘘みたいに良くなっちまう。でもそれはあくまでもその場しのぎに過ぎねえからな。時間が経つとまた苦しくなる。
Yeah.
しかも最初の頃は少しの血で良かったのに、そのうち多くの量を飲まなきゃ落ち着かなくなってくるんだ。
I think this might be the only route where we really get an in-depth explanation of how the whole bloodlust thing works.
I was at a loss for words. A monster that could only survive by drinking human blood? It seemed like the kind of monster that you could only hear about in legends. What about you, Heisuke? Are you, drinking blood?
頼むから聞かないでくれよ。そういうのは。
Oh, buddy. Sorry.
He made some manner of excuse after that and then shot up. He departed from the common room quietly, leaving me alone with my thoughts about Hijikata. Was he really okay?
Yep.
Had Hijikata already experienced the bloodlust Heisuke told me about? Did he refuse to tell anyone about his suffering? He couldn't have been in the throes of it when I saw him, but it was clear that sooner or later he would find himself in a great deal of pain. He was doing so much for the Shinsengumi. I wanted to do something, anything to ease that pain. I know. He had been doing research on the Furies. Perhaps he'd left something useful behind at my house, or the one that used to be mine. It was already too late to visit, so I resolved to go the next day and see if I could find anything.
All right. This is a good spot for us to take our break before shit probably hits the fan, as they say in the biz. So we will bounce for about 10 minutes or so, refresh your drinks. Also, yeah, I know. Shimada just said don't go out alone, and she's like, bye, gotta go. Anyway. Go refresh your drinks, pet a cat, or whatever, and we will come back and see what terrible thing happens. See you shortly. Friends, I have returned and I have cake. It is red velvet cake. It's part of a 4-pack of like a variety of different cakes my mother bought while she was grocery shopping, because tomorrow, it's still Saturday here. Tomorrow, the 2nd, is her birthday. Yeah, it's very funny. We have so many August birthdays just in No Chill alone, and also apparently in my family, because my mother is born on the 2nd and I am way at the very end. I don't like chocolate cakes. Red velvet is the closest I can get to chocolate cake and actually enjoy it. Most chocolate cake is too bitter for me. For the same reason I really don't enjoy brownies. I'm just not super into chocolate. I mean, day of the month, not year. Thank you. Some brownies I'm fine with, but for the most part, I just am not interested in them. Man, I need to catch up on Doctor Who. I haven't seen any of the Jodie Baker stuff, and I feel bad. Oh yes, Jodie Whittaker. Gosh. Brain. Brain-mouth connection doesn't work sometimes. I had a long week. Give me a fucking break. I don't think I didn't finish all the Capaldi stuff, but I super liked him. Tennant is fave, but Capaldi is basically neck and neck with him. Yeah! He's very good. Alright, we ready to come back to this? Let's do this. Yeah, like I found most of his most of the seasons of his I saw, I enjoyed it. But it definitely was mostly because of his performance. Of course, I'm also one of the rare people that doesn't seem to hate the fact that Clara exists. I didn't mind her. I kind of liked her. I know, that's weird. I'm sorry. Yay! Now I don't feel so alone. High five. Clara was the companion for a large chunk of the Matt Smith stuff, and then also Capaldi's run. Like, writing-wise, there was some stupid shit that happened with her. But I don't blame the character for that. Yeah, exactly, Lynn. It's like, the character is cool, but what they did with her... You are right, Cassie. Anyway, we could waste literal hours if I talk about Doctor Who, so let's not do that. Let's get back to Hakuoki. Imagine that crossover for 30 seconds. Anyway, onward.
The following day, I left a neatly written note behind at the inn for anyone who may have been wondering where I was headed. I departed for my old house in Edo. Hijikata had left long before me to meet with several members of the shogunate elite. No one had apparently visited the house in several years, and everything was covered in a thin layer of dust.
Right? That's exactly what it would be. Turns out the Oni are aliens that settled on Earth like centuries ago.
Now, where would he keep his Fury research? It must be hidden somewhere.
Yeah. Shinsengumi don't run. That's silly. Imagine how frustrated the Doctor would be in this age where everybody's just, like, shooting at and or cutting each other apart as a first course of action. I
brushed some of the dust off a stack of documents and opened them up. Each one was covered in barely legible scribbles. It would take me forever to decipher them. No, this was nothing compared to what the rest of the Shinsengumi went through. I had to do it.
Oh god, you are right, Anna. What if Sakamoto is the Doctor? You know? I'll take that headcanon, I guess.
Shoot. I guess that wasn't it either. I sat back on the floor and sighed heavily as my eyes dropped to look at the dusty, unkempt floor. How foolish I'd been to think I could waltz into my house, find my father's secret documents, and solve something that had plagued the Shinsengumi for years.
It's a Doctor Who AU version of Hakuoki where Sakamoto is the Doctor and Chizuru is the companion.
No. I couldn't give up. I had to keep trying. Sooner or later I'd find something. Hijikata and Heisuke needed my help. I had to find something. From the corner of my eye, I noticed an earmarked fold in the stack. Huh? As I flipped open a particularly thick sheaf of papers, a small stack fell out and landed on the floor as a cloud of dust floated from its landing place. It appeared to be some kind of...
Chizuru is the doctor? Does that, like, make Kazuma the master or something? Wow, I hate that I just said that. Never mind. We're just moving on completely. I do not know how much I enjoy this fanfiction we are collectively writing. God. Chizuru is a doctor's daughter.
Was it a formula? Is this about the Furies? As I studied it, I realized what I'd found. The paper described a medicine that could suppress the Furies' bloodlust, keeping them from losing control. The idea of Hijikata or Heisuke losing control was frightening, but I read on. It seemed that my father had returned to Edo just after I'd left for Kyoto. While he was in Edo, he'd mixed up the ingredients for the medicine.
No, they didn't. At least not in this route.
Michi, hello! How are you? I looked over the instructions. The ingredients he'd used were likely still in the warehouse. With his instructions, I should be able to mix it myself. This shouldn't take too long, right?
Oh, I say that to myself before beginning every project, and I'm always wrong.
I'm good, Michi.
Had a fairly chill day. And now we're doing this. Yes, I remember reading about that, Cassie, and that is like, that brought me so much delight.
And with my father's medicine, I could save Hijikata, Heisuke, and Sandan. I was going to seize this opportunity to help them.
Yeah, exactly, King. She's also literally the daughter of the actor who played the Fifth Doctor. It's so weird.
I ran to the warehouse and got to work. Come hell or high water, I would finish this.
Yeah, exactly. All of us. This won't take that long. We say. And then days or weeks or years later, we look back at how foolish we were. A Doctor Whovian. Oh god. How does one anime Doctor Who? Is that some sort of crime? Am I having thought crimes right now? Whatever. That's true. I feel like somebody's done that.
By the time I finished, night had already fallen, and moonlight peeked through a sliver of an open window.
Oh no. Chizuru, why did you do this? I mean, I have played in a Doctor Who RPG. Nicholas ran one about a year ago. It was great. I got to play in it. It was very fun. I'm I'm blanking on so many character names, but we actually played as characters from the show. Oh my god, help me. Someone with a better memory than me. Sontar class. Yes, somebody played Strax. We played the trio. Oh my god, why can I literally cannot remember Lizard Lady's name, and it's killing me. But I played her. And then somebody played Jenny. Yes, Lady Vastra. Thank you. I got to play Lady Vastra. It was, I mean, I got to play Lady Vastra. What else is there to say? Yeah, it was on Nicholas's channel. I think we streamed it. I don't know if a VOD exists. I'm not sure if they saved it. I think I do, Cassie. I really think I do.
I remembered what Shimada had told me about how many murders there'd been at night lately, and I stuck to busy streets as I made my way back to the Kama Inn. Oh! Just as I arrived, Sannan and Heisuke were leaving. Their backs were turned away from me, so I called out to them to make sure they'd hear me.
Yeah, she made it back okay. Wild, right? Talk about subverting our expectations.
Sannan!
おや、ずいぶん遅いお帰りですね。物騒ですから、夜一人で出歩くのは控えた方がいいですよ。
Aw, how nice that you care.
I'm sorry. I meant to come back earlier, but I was so busy, and I just kind of lost track of time, and... Anyway, I've got something for you. I handed Sannan the medicine, which I'd wrapped in a small piece of paper.
これは?
It's medicine to suppress the Fury bloodlust. I went back to my house today and found instructions for how to make it. It should make the pain go away, at least for a little while. He looked down at the paper I'd handed him, then back to me. Sannan bit his lip coyly before looking into my eyes.
お返しします。気持ちはありがたいですが、私には必要ありません。
Okay. Cool. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm just gonna drink blood. It's fine. I got this handled.
Huh? Wait, but without it, you...
我々の吸血衝動は薬などで抑えられるものではありません。
Okay.
抑えれば抑えるほど苦しみは増し、正気を削られていくだけ。こんな薬は気休めでしかありません。
But...
失礼。これから市中を見回ってまいりますので、これで。
Before I could protest, he was gone, walking briskly down the dim, open street. Without the medicine, what would Sannan do when the bloodlust came? To not only acknowledge but accept this insatiable craving as part of one's life seems beyond me. Oh no. I remembered what Kimigiku had said to us, back at the Fushimi Magistrate's office.
Yeah, a blood crawl. It's like a pub crawl, but more murderous.
Dewa, あなたたち新選組の羅刹が見回りと称して辻斬りをしているのはご存知ですか?
Fuck.
No. It couldn't be. It was the Shinsengumi's job to protect Kyoto and its citizens. Surely Sannan wouldn't attack people on the street just to satisfy his thirst for blood.
千鶴、俺はその薬飲むよ。くれるか?
Oh, he's gay.
Yes, of course. I handed him the packet Sannan had so recently refused. He stuffed it into his pocket as he stared off down the street at Sannan's rapidly retreating back.
今日は俺も見回りについていく。
Attaboy.
もし三男さんがおかしな真似をしようとしたら、全力で止めるから心配すんなよ。
All right. I'm counting on you, Heisuke. Oh, right. Where's Hijikata? Is he back yet?
いや、夕方頃に戻ってきたはずだけど、ずっと部屋にこもりっきりだぜ。
Oh. I'm going to go check on him then. Heisuke and I said our quick goodbyes, and I made my way into the Kama Inn and up to Hijikata's room. I was hoping that the wave of anxiety I was feeling was a needless one, but I had a very bad feeling about something as I called out to him from behind the sliding door. Hijikata? Are you there? I've got something for you. Nothing. I was about to turn away, assuming he was asleep, when... The suppressed voice was clearly in pain. Hijikata? I'm coming in! I slid open the door and ran into the room. He was bent over on top of his desk at the back of the room. Sweat poured down his face, and I could hear his teeth squeak horribly as he gritted them. He looked... Hijikata! Are you okay? I rushed over by his side.
バカ野郎! 大声を出すんじゃねえ!
Yeah, you're definitely fine. Ready for uncomfortable narration?
But...
こんなもんすぐ収まるに決まってんじゃねえか。くだらねえことで騒ぎ立てるな。
He wrapped his arms around his shoulders and squeezed until his knuckles turned white as he glared up at me. His breath came in pants and he shivered violently. It was Hijikata's personality to refuse to show any pain, or even any emotion at all.
Except for anger.
Or at least to show as little as possible. For him to be like this, the pain must have been unimaginable. Was this the bloodlust that Heisuke had spoken of? What was I supposed to do? If he drank the medicine my father had created, then the pain would likely go away. But Sannan had said it would only be a temporary solution.
Yeah, of course he has. Like, obviously.
Then... should I give him some of my blood? Would Hijikata even want me to give him my blood? What was I going to do?
We're gonna save really quick. Because while we're here, I feel like we might just, like, quickly skip back and do the, Let's do the Endurance scene, because we'll get a CG out of that, I believe. We haven't been doing those most of the time. But they do get a CG, and eventually we're gonna need to fill those slots. Since we're here, let's just do that on his, and then we'll go back and do the give him blood nonsense. Also, though, the make him endure it choice is always kind of like, man, are we just that rude? It's kind of mean.
Blood would certainly calm him down, but I didn't think Hijikata would want that. I was running out of options. I could make him take the medicine I'd made, but Sannan had said that it was only a temporary solution. The pain was getting worse.
Right? I know, it also doesn't make a lot of sense, but whatever. We're on a CG hunt here.
I could hear his teeth grind and the muscles in his neck looked ready to snap. He tore at his hair in agony. Hijikata, are you all right? I ran toward him, but he threw out an arm as if to stop me.
いいから放っておけ。もう似たようなことは何度も経験してんだ。時間が経てば何とかなる。
But...
三男さんや平助や俺が羅刹化を命じた連中はこいつを乗り越えたんだろう。
Yeah, exactly. Like, when we know the medicine is just, if anything, stands to make it worse, it makes more sense to do that.
だったら俺に我慢できねえはずがねえ。だから放っておけ。
Even while his body writhed, his eyes burned with a determination driven by fear and pain. The more it hurt, the harder he fought. I couldn't bear to see him in pain any longer, and I turned to leave the room.
I guess we don't get a CG on this one, but this is more like what actually happened in the movie. Sort of. He kicked her out of the room, though. Alright. Do. We'll just back up. Alright. Time to do the thing.
There was no time to waste. It wasn't the best plan, perhaps, but I couldn't bear to see him in pain any longer. And besides, at long last I would finally be useful.
That's a slightly slippery slope to be on, Chizuru, but okay.
Hijikata shook fiercely, and I could only gaze in horror as I imagined how unbearable the pain was. I said nothing and drew the kodachi I kept at my waist.
He's like, are you gonna fucking kill me?
I slid my finger along the edge of the blade, which I barely felt. A bead of thick blood formed over the cut. Please, drink my blood. It'll make you feel better, right? His clothes were drenched in sweat, and he shook like a leaf being swept by the wind.
Yeah, although if we get a CG here, it doesn't track with where I believe he drinks from, but I don't remember where the CGs appear in Hijikata's route, to be quite honest. Maybe we don't get one here.
And this was it. I couldn't back down. This was my chance to do something for him, to make a difference. But perhaps most importantly, I just couldn't watch him suffer anymore. Don't worry about me. Please. I begged him desperately as I offered him my fingers oozing out with blood.
Yeah.
And though he tried to resist, his eyes were drawn to my finger, to the thick red blood that slowly beaded and dropped.
Don't bleed all over the tatami, Chizuru. God.
He balled his fists tightly, but he couldn't resist.
バカなことしやがる。嫁入り前の女が自分の肌に傷をつけるもんじゃねえ。
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, he's doing the blood drinking thing.
関係あるかよ。鬼だろうがなんだろうが、お前が女だってことに変わりはねえ。
That's sort of nice of him, in his way.
His breathing had already begun to calm itself. Through his hand on my wrist, I could feel his shaking subsiding as well. At last, I thought, I was able to be useful.
Yeah, garbage gender roles, but like unsurprising given the time.
A few moments later, his hand slipped from my wrist. The cut on my finger had already healed. The split in the flesh began to seal before my eyes, and I stood quietly as Hijikata winced. I'm sorry for being so, forward. I bowed to him.
Yeah.
He took a quiet breath and shook his head. A sense of calm seemed to emerge from him.
痩せ我慢してる場合じゃねえってことは俺もよくわかってるんだ。近藤さんを負けさせねえためには化け物にでもなるしかねえんだよな。
So as you can see, they're setting up all of Hijikata's hard labor, all for the sake of Kondo. So, when Kondo bites it, that's going to be real fun, right?
Absently, I touched my fingers to the wrist Hijikata had taken when he drank my blood. A peculiar feeling lingered on the surface of my skin. It was almost as though I could still feel his warmth there.
Yeah, an emotional arc right into a pit full of broken glass. Yep. Or we smash through the glass and then land on the broken glass.
Even after the events of that night, Hijikata pushed himself just as hard as before. He visited the shogunate officials whenever he could find the time. Eventually, his work began to pay off, and they were given one of the Hatamoto mansions to use as their headquarters. Between his demanding schedule and Fury-related difficulties, I knew he had to be in miserable condition, but he was determined to give Kondo his war. This alone seemed to sustain him and drive him forward. Perhaps the gods took pity on him.
Hey, Dad's back.
お帰りなさいませ、近藤局長。俺たちずっとこの日が来ることを信じてましたよ。
大げさだな。だがありがとう。俺もこうしてみんなと再び会うことができて嬉しいよ。さて、我々の今後の行動についてだが、 まずは甲府へ向かい、そこで新政府軍を迎え撃つこととなった。
Oh no, Kofu's where shit goes bad. More bad, worse, and so on. Kofu's just a bad time.
ご公儀からはすでに大砲2門、銃器、そして軍用金を頂戴している。ぜひとも手柄を立てねばな。
He's like, the Shogun's giving us a couple of guns and money. Yeah, Kofu Castle is a very silly place. On second thought, let's not go there.
Kondo was promoted to executive lieutenant minister, and Hijikata to vice minister prior to their mission.
So, vice minister is an executive position within a feudal holding considered just below a daimyo that manages the distribution of rice and salaries amongst the serfdom. Neat. That's a hell of a promotion for Hijikata. Like, that is a substantial promotion. I think they might be old-timey black powder cannons, honestly. I feel like they don't get the cool modern arms that the Satsuma Choshu have, but I'd have to check historical records. But a lot of the thrust of the war was that the Satsuma Choshu were just better armed.
It was a momentous honor, although some of the other men were hesitant to find cause for celebration.
なあ、近藤さん。その甲府を守るって話を持ってきたのはどこの誰だ?
Oh dear.
勝阿波の神殿だが、それがどうかしたのか?
大の戦嫌いで有名らしいな。そんな人がなんで俺たちに大砲やら軍資金を気前よく出してくれるんだ?
He sure does.
そもそも徳川の殿様自体が新政府軍に従う気満々らしいしな。かつなんとかさんも同じ意向なんじゃねえのか?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the bro squad's like, hold up a minute, boss. Doesn't this feel weird to you?
Kondo frowned. He crossed his arms, bent his chest, and spoke up.
長倉君、原田君、これは幕府直々の命令なんだぞ。
Are they though? Because the shogun bailed.
確かに戦況が芳しくないため、今は慶喜公も恭順なさっているが、もし我々が甲府城を守りきれば、幕府側に勝算ありと見て、戦に本腰を入れてくださるかもしれん。それに、勝てる勝てないの問題ではない。お上が我々を甲府を守るに足る部隊だと認めてくれているんだぞ。ならば全力で応えるのが武士の本懐というものだろう。そうじゃないかね、長倉君。
Percy has arrived, and the door is flung wide open.
「その言い方やめてくれねえか。俺は新選組幹部ではあるが、あんたの家来になったつもりはねえんだからな。
Ooh, yeah, this is where it gets a little bit ugly. Kondo's all hopped up on how he's like basically a daimyo and stuff now, and yeah, or close to being a daimyo anyway. Nagakura's like, ego check, my man.
Kondo looked upset, but Harada spoke up before he could say anything.
Saito, お前はどう思ってるんだ?
Ah, yes. Ask the sole pragmatic individual in the room.
俺は局長と副長の意見に従う。
Except that's how Saito is. Damn it.
All eyes turned to Hijikata, who was observing the amicable commotion. Amicable commotion.
Was it really, though?
Before him quietly.
とりあえず新政府軍との戦いに備えて大使を増やそう。甲府城を抑えたら幕府からも増援が来るはずだ。それに勝阿波守殿の意向についてだが、いくら戦嫌いとはいえ避けられねえ局面があるってことぐらいは分かってるはずだぜ。
Or, you know, he's using you guys as disposable troops so that he can avoid war.
なんせこの戦で幕府が負けちまえば幕臣は全員食いぶちをなくしちまうんだからな。俺たちを任しゃしねえだろ。
ま、確かにそれも一理あるけどよ。
When Hijikata put it that way, it seemed like Nagakura had nothing more to oppose.
では我々は甲府の山に先回りし、野襲の準備をしておいた方が良さそうですね。
Sunnun's like, we'll go early and kill a bunch of people for you. How's that sound?
今回は羅刹隊は出動させねえ。ここで待機しててもらう。
それはなぜです？
幕府からの増援が来たとき、あんたらの姿を見られるのはまずい。それに甲府城には他の藩の奴らも多く詰めてるからな。存在を公にしちまったら隠密部隊の意味がねえだろう。
ですが
まだ戦は始まったばっかりなんだし、こう焦る必要はねえって三男さん。
I saw Hijikata and Heisuke exchange a quick look. They must have realized how Sunnun would react and talked it over beforehand. To me, at least, there seemed to be silent agreement.
よし、それでは解散。出立までは間があるから各自体調を整えておいてくれ。
And that was that. The captains left for their stations, seeking to brief their subordinates and prepare for battle.
Yeah, I think they may have already been renamed. It never got mentioned here.
Only Hijikata remained behind to begin sifting through the massive stacks of paperwork and maps. I timidly approached him. Hijikata, are you sure it'll be okay?
何がだ?
This war. It's going to be difficult, isn't it? Wouldn't it have been better to take the Fury Corps along?
Yeah, I think they might be the Koyo Regulatory Company already. I believe that sort of takes place when they move to Edo.
He sighed and set down the map he'd been studying.
前に千姫とかいう女が忠告に来ただろう。羅刹隊が辻切りをしてやがるって。
Yes.
俺も正直言って三男さんの仕業じゃねえかと睨んでるんだ。
Ruh-roh.
What?
今んとこ羅刹隊は貴重な戦力だ。血を得るために江戸の人間を切って回るなんて真似を許すわけにはいかねえ。それに鳥羽伏見の時は敵方が銀の銃弾を使ってやがったせいで羅刹隊が役立たずになっちまったからな。切り抜ける方法が見つかるまで三男さんには留守番しててもらう。平助はその見張りだな。 あとは再起のための武器調達もしてもらわなきゃならね
A counterattack? Does that mean he was even planning for a possible loss at Kofu?
多分次も苦しい戦いになる。本当ならお前を連れて行くわけにはいかねえんだが、ここに残しておけばまたあの風間とかいう野郎が乗り込んでくるだろうしな。
Aw.
お前も連れて行くが、くれぐれも危険な真似はするんじゃねえぞ。必ず俺の指示に従え。いいな。
Okay. I could feel a nervous knot forming in my stomach, but Hijikata had to have a far greater case of nerves than I did. I must work hard not to get in anyone's way.
Time to go get destroyed on the battlefield.
It was morning on the day we left for Kofu. Everyone's up already. Huh? The common room was full of men dressed in clothing I'd never seen before. All right, Cassie, good night.
あれ、千鶴ちゃん、ずいぶん早いんだな。
Oh boy, we get the oh no. Western uniforms are hot.
Huh? Your clothes. Are you really Nagakura? What are you wearing?
副長の指示だ。今日から戦の時は様相にすべしとな。
敵は全員様相だからな。勝つためにはこっちの方が都合が良さそうだ。
Really? Hijikata was dressed predominantly in black, and his outfit gave him an elegant look. It suited him well. He looked as handsome as an actor. I couldn't help but admire him for a moment.
どうした？俺の着方にどこかおかしなところでもあるか？
The war is fought on the fashion walkway as well as on the battlefield, indeed.
Hmm? Oh, no, definitely not.
おかしなやつだな。
Wait, Kondo's not wearing Western clothes.
どうも異国の服は窮屈そうでな。あの靴というのも歩きにくくて仕方ない。
Yeah, in Saito's route, he like fucked up the buttons. And Chizuru had to help him fix them.
それに、やはり武士というのは袴に刀を刺していないと締まらん気がしてな。
Oh my god, Kondo, you baby.
あんたはそのままでいいんだ。前線に出るわけじゃねえし、陣中にどっしり構えててくれりゃいい。
You know, I'm not sure. I don't think there's any photographical evidence of Kondo. But based on the way the historical guy is described, it's very possible he might not have been on board with the Western uniform thing.
あんたの存在自体が大使にとって支えになるんだからな。
Hijikata's like, don't worry about it. You just sit in the back and be inspiring.
そうか？そこまで言われると照れてしまうが。それでは出かけるぞ。甲府城にいざ。
And thus the Shinsengumi assumed the name Koyo Regulatory Company, and we headed for Kofu by way of Hachioji. On the way, Kondo split from the main group to visit his hometown.
Yeah, there's the name change.
近藤さんはどうしてるんだ？見当たらねえが。
局長でしたらまだ本体と合流できていないようですが。
まだ追いついてこねえのか。いつまで宿で酒盛りしてるつもりだよ。
まあ久々の故郷だしな。偉くなった姿を見せて回りてえんじゃねえの。
Makes them sound like tax collectors.
久しぶりに嫁さんと娘にも会いてえだろうし。
これから戦なんだぜ。そんなことしてる場合じゃねえだろ。
Nagakura's mad.
八王子に入隊希望者が何人かいるらしいんだ。その見分もしなきゃいけねえからな。
Also, I would just like to let us observe the 3 outfits on screen and break things down here. We have Hijikata buttoned up all the way, ascot included. Sano's like, I don't need a fucking tie, and I don't need all of my buttons, but you know, we'll keep a few. And then there's this motherfucker over here on the right, who refuses to deny the world access to his pecs and some of his 6-pack. Nagakura never change. Exactly. I will use only 2 buttons. No more. It kind of does. Like, Hijikata is coarse in speech, but he's not a sloppy person. So it sort of reflects well on how he tends to carry himself. He's got a mouth like a goddamn sailor, but other than that...
新入りの大使と打ち解け合うには酒組み交わすのが一番だろ
う。まあ、そりゃそうだけどさ。
Hijikata's eyes narrowed and Nagakura looked unsatisfied as Hijikata muttered to himself.
金ばらまいて接待しなくても大使が集まってくるんなら近藤さんにあんな真似させなくても済むんだがな。
That's it, Noel. Yup. Also, yeah, Chizuru gets a Western outfit in quite a few of the routes. She will in this one, too.
Hijikata's words cut like a knife. The Shinsengumi had made a name for themselves in Kyoto, true, but the shogunate was faced with a numerically superior force. We no longer had the luxury of interviewing potential recruits and taking the best ones. Now, we had to offer money and alcohol to attract them. Hijikata would have rather cut off his own arm than stoop that low, but he had no choice.
副長、お知らせしたいことが。
So, continuing the uniform comparison, we also have Saito, who is decidedly buttoned up and even has, like, this hella high collar action happening. And on top of that, like, his vest is buttoned all the way to the damn top, and his coat is closed up and buttoned as well. I don't know how he doesn't die in the summer. But hey. Yeah, exactly. The high collar kind of mimics his scarf in his original outfit. He covers his neck.
なんだどうかしたか
どうやら甲府城にはすでに敵が入っているようです。
なんだと伝令だすぐに近藤さんを呼んできてくれ。
はい。
It was some time before Kondo received the message and returned to the main body of soldiers. And that was long enough for news of the castle's fall to spread along the ranks, and many panicked.
Yeah, as Lynn notes, here it is.
Nearly 300 of the men we'd left Edo with deserted, reducing our forces to a mere 100 soldiers.
So they had like 400 men and 300 of them bailed. Yikes.
Nagakura and Harada seemed more cautious, and they both advised retreat. But Kondo decided that we would form up for battle and fight until the bitter end.
With the numbers in the situation here, holy shit, this is the dumbest thing Kondo could have possibly done.
Now that we had accepted weapons and money from the shogunate, he said that there could be no retreat.
とりあえず俺は江戸に駐屯している増援部隊を呼んでくる。ここで負け戦をするわけにはいかねえ。大使にはこの後援軍が到着すると伝えておいてくれ。これ以上脱走されちゃかなわねえ。
御意。
Saito nodded, then turned and jogged off toward the rest of the soldiers. After giving his directions to the last of his men, Hijikata finally turned to look at me.
お前は誰かと一緒に江戸まで落ちろ。ここは戦場になる。少しでも安全な場所に逃げるに越したことはねえ。
I decided to...
We're staying with you, dude.
I'll stay here. I can't run away to somewhere safe while everyone else is off fighting. I'll stay here to protect Kondo until you get back. Hijikata frowned.
どうやって守るつもりだ。お前ごときの腕じゃ何の戦力にもならねえじゃねえか。
I mean, he's not wrong.
And that was what I expected him to say, but I wasn't going to back down so easily. It's true that I'm not much good with a sword, but I can still be his shield. Any small wounds I sustain will heal quickly enough.
なんでそこまで必死になる？誰もそんな命令下しちゃいねえじゃねえか。
Well, I know I'm probably out of line when I say this, but I also know that we can't lose Kondo. Not now. I'm sick and tired of always being protected. I want to help. Please. I'd been with them long enough to know how much Kondo meant to Hijikata and all of the Shinsengumi. If I went back to Edo and Kondo died, just thinking about that. No. I refuse to be the only person to escape unscathed this time. Hijikata chewed his lip thoughtfully for a moment, and his hard, piercing gaze never seemed to drift away from my face. Hijikata refused to break his concentration, and after a long moment he sighed.
そこまで言うんなら、お前に命令を下す。新選組大使の一員としてな。
Oh, hey.
What? My eyebrows shot up.
お前に近藤さんの護衛役を命じる。常に局長に付き従い、 その役に立て。
Right? We're official! I mean, they're desperate for people right now, but we're official!
Yes, sir! Without even thinking, I straightened up and began to nod vigorously. I, Chizuru Yukimura, will protect my chief, even if it means my life. Before I could finish, Hijikata cut me off with a sharp expression.
ただし条件がある。絶対に死ぬな。
Aww.
What? That wasn't the sort of thing I expected to hear from a man like Hijikata. Be careful, maybe, but not, you can't die.
盾になろうなんてバカなことは考えなくてもいい。俺はお前に死ねなんて命じる気はねえ。
He cares!
He gave me one last pointed look, and then turned to look towards Kofu Castle bitterly in the distance.
今回の敵が新政府軍に尻尾を振った寄せ集めの連中なら、俺たちでもなんとか戦えるかもしれねえが、薩長の奴ら相手じゃどうやったって勝てねえ。なるべく早く戻るつもりだが、俺が帰ってくる前に何かあったら、サイトと一緒に近藤さんを逃がせ。
We're sure gonna try.
もちろんお前が盾になる必要はねえ。一緒に逃げろ。絶対に死ぬんじゃねえぞ。
That... I mean, we'd be dead, but... Cool. That threat is somewhat subdued by the fact it's impossible, Hijikata. I guess.
I felt a cold sweat break out on my back as Hijikata's words sunk in. I'd seen others fight for their lives in battle many times, but this is the first time I'd personally join in battle. Would I really be able to protect Kondo? Would it even be possible to evade our enemies, let Kondo escape, and survive? Perhaps Hijikata noticed my sudden fear, because he gave a short, bitter laugh.
おい、お前、その小太刀を少し抜いて持て。
Huh? I fumbled with it for a moment, surprised at the strangeness of his request, and finally pulled my sword from its scabbard. Then Hijikata pulled out his own sword in a smooth motion.
Oh, right. His fucking sword has the longest goddamn name.
And then he took his Izumi no Kami Kanesada and tapped its blade against my own.
So yeah, it's a very fancy fucking sword. Oh, thank you.
The clear tone they made drew goosebumps from my arms.
緊張を打つと言ってな。武士が誓いを立てるときはこうするもんなんだと。
Doh. That's so cool. I know. Hijikata doesn't do the, like, Hijikata's love language is not words. Not even a little bit. He's more of an actions kind of dude.
Oh, really? Interesting.
俺もお前も正式には武士じゃねえから、所詮真似事だがな。
Why?
これは証だ。俺は必ず戻ってくる。お前も生き延びて俺に会うっていう証を今立てたんだ。
Aww. Excuse me. I know! This is also a nice turning point, thinking back to like all the Kyoto Wind stuff and then the early parts of this is like Hijikata's been spending all this time telling Chizuru like just stay out of the fucking way, just don't do anything, please just stay out of the way. And now he's literally telling her, okay, you're a member of the Shinsengumi. I am leaving you in charge of protecting Kondo, the most important person in the Shinsengumi, and to him personally. And then they make this vow. That's a huge moment.
Dakara, 信じて待っていろ。死なずにな。
His words were confident, and listening to him, I felt as if they'd somehow made me stronger, more capable. As someone who dreamt of being a true samurai, that oath meant a great deal to him. I had to follow through. There could be no breaking this promise. I understand. I will protect Kondo, and I will survive. Until Hijikata returns, I must protect Kondo until the end. He had given me a chance to show that I was useful, and he trusted me with an important task. Then, I would complete that task, no matter what. We need to protect Kondo. We must survive.
And the battle's gonna go south real fast. Pardon me whilst I drink my tea.
Slowly, the Koyo Regulatory Company found itself driven into a corner. Kondo did his best to try and explain to them that he and his men were only there to protect the area. ...
around Kofu Castle. That was a weird break in the lines, but okay.
In the hopes that this situation might be resolved without bloodshed. Unfortunately, one of the new recruits cried out that they were Shinsengumi and opened fire on the castle's defenders. That was the spark that lit the powder keg.
Powder peg? What's that even? Words are hard. Also, yeah, that fucking dumbass that did that.
The bulk of our opponent's forces turned out to be men from the Tosa domain who had been trained in Western tactics and weapons.
Tosa!
Our guns were old and didn't have the range to match the Tosas. It quickly became a hopeless battle.
Also, let's pause and think for a moment about the fact that in this timeline, Ryoma's dead.
Blah. Kondo had no choice but to retreat. We have to go, Kondo. If we don't go now, you'll be killed.
しかし、大使たちがまだ戦っているというのに、我々だけ逃げるわけには。
You're the one who wanted to fight, man.
Kondo, if you stay, then you'll be killed too. Even if we lose this battle, Hijikata says that as long as you're safe, there's still hope. We can regroup and fight back later. I grabbed Kondo's hand and pulled him as hard as I could back towards the road down the mountain. He looked across the battlefield at his men. They were hopelessly outnumbered, many already fallen. The smell of death stung our noses. I saw tears well up at the corner of his eyes. He bowed deeply toward the men still engaged in the battle just as Saito returned from the front line. His steely expression was colored by streaks of ash and dust from the battlefield.
撤退の準備は整ったか。では行くぞ。
Right. Come on, Kondo. We have to go. Saito and I took hold of him and ran into the forest to escape under cover of night. We'll be in Hachijoji soon, Kondo. Hang in there. Perhaps it was because I'd never seen him lose before, but this was the first time I'd seen Kondo so drained.
大使たちをたくさん死なせてしまったな。
Yeah, you did.
You can't beat yourself up over that now. Like Hijikata said, we just don't have what it takes to beat an army with Western weapons and tactics. I might as well have kept my mouth shut for all that my words seemed to reach him. Kondo continued staring numbly beyond us.
大将が俺じゃなくて別の誰かだったら、あいつらも死なずに済んだかもしれんな。
Are you listening to me? I said... Just then.
おい、そこにいるのは誰だ?
Fuck.
From the other side of the bushes, I heard a voice that didn't sound familiar. I peeked out just long enough to catch sight of a uniform that didn't belong to any of our soldiers. We froze. Saito, however, looked straight to the bushes.
我々の声が聞こえんのか? 今確かに物音がしたぞ。
Nobody?
俺が時間を稼ぐ。あんたは局長を連れて逃げろ。
Saito, don't you die. Granted, he technically has plot armor because history. Not that that stopped them in the movie. Fuck.
Thank you, Saito. I gave him a quick bow of thanks and then tiptoed away, Kondo in tow. We had to rush down the mountain as quickly as possible.
Oh no!
Just as I had finally managed to get Kondo moving at a decent pace, a shadow leapt out of the undergrowth to bar our way.
ここを通ると思っていました。
Well, where Amagiri is, I suspect someone else is not far. Fuck.
The shadow was none other than the demon Amagiri, companion of Kazuma.
雪村君、彼は確か薩摩藩の手の者だったな。
Amagiri, I hope you're here to just, like, deliver a message? Thanks, now I'm just imagining Amagiri actually collects cute novelty soaps, like, secretly. And I sort of love it. Or maybe for better context, he has a giant weakness for Rakugan.
Yes.
これ以上逃げ切るのはどう考えても無理だろう。
He secretly got a big sweet tooth. Yeah, I could headcanon that. He likes dainty sweets.
ここは潔く負け戦の責任を取って腹を詰めたい。そちらの御仁、解釈を願えるか。
Kondo, nah, dude. Anyway, he's asking Amagiri to be his kaishaku, which... What the fuck? Kondo, no. This is no time to be like this.
What? No! I can't let you die here! Amagiri had remained silent for our short exchange, but now he spoke up.
私は薩摩藩のために働いてはいますが、新選組の方々を切れとの命令は受けておりません。
He's like, man, I'm not here to kill you.
用があるのはそちらの娘だけです。
Of course it is.
Me?
君とあの土方という若者は風間を狂わせる。
You are so polite, Amagiri. He had to dig real deep for that word, didn't he?
藩の意向を無視し、単独行動ばかり起こす彼に、薩摩藩も手を焼いています。
Ah, yes. In this route, Kazuma goes fucking AWOL against the domain and his whole clan, and that's a problem.
だが我々としても今、薩摩藩と手を切るわけにはいかない。ですから。
He is. He really is. He's just like, fuck these stupid orders. I'm not doing what the Satsuma domain wants. I'm mad. Rah!
Amagiri's eyes promised violence, and his body tightened, ready to make good on that promise.
雪村千鶴、君にはここで死んでもらいます。
Is that really how you want to solve this problem? Shit.
He had no weapon, but I knew just how powerful he was even without one. Had I been carrying the finest sword ever made, he still could have ended my life easily. Nonetheless, I wouldn't let myself be killed, no matter how futile that fight might prove to be. I drew my sword. Kondo, go! This man is after me and only me. You must escape.
しかし、
I'll be fine. I have a sword and he has no weapons at all. Please, the Shinsengumi needs you. You can't abandon them. Kondo's mouth hung slack for a moment, speechless. Then he shut it, set his jaw and drew his sword.
どんな理由があろうとも、女子供を見捨てて逃げるなど武士のすることではない。
Attaboy, Kondo. But also, please don't die.
Kondo, what are you saying? Without a word, Kondo got into stance and slowly closing the distance between Amagiri and himself.
これは敗残の将だ。無謀な作戦でたくさんの部下を死に追いやった。そんな俺が女性を守って死ぬことができるんだ。武士として、男としては最高の死に方じゃないかね。
No! His face was calm and serene, and there was no hesitation in his eyes. I'd seen that look before, on Inoue's face just before he died under Kazuma's blade. He couldn't be convinced. His mind was made up. When he spoke, his voice rang with determination.
新選組局長近藤勇、 参る。にゃ
His sword held high, he charged toward Amagiri.
She's scram. Can't do that because it's late here, but you get the idea.
He was going to die, just like Inoue had. I buried my face in my hands, overcome with despair and helplessness. But then... The intense force of their clash made my body tremble. Amagiri instantly faced Kondo.
か弱き者のために勝ち目のない戦いに挑む。そういう無謀さは嫌いではありません。
At the last moment, he slid aside as if made of water. He grasped Kondo's blade with his left hand and drove it right into Kondo's stomach.
Ow!
As Kondo began to fall toward the ground, Amagiri flipped him around so that he slammed directly onto his back.
灰袋を思い切り叩きました。しばらく呼吸ができないはずです。
Are you gonna kill us now?
He glanced down at Kondo, groaning on the ground, then turned his eyes to me.
さて、次は君です。雪村千鶴。悪く思わぬよう。
Yeah, the verbiage was a little scary. Like, from context, you can grasp that he jammed the hilt backward into Kondo's midriff, but still. Clarity would have been nice.
Amagiri swung his fists mercilessly. His fist pounded me to the ground, and I had no time to dodge his pacey attacks.
Pacey attacks? What the fuck does that mean?
I felt like my whole body was going to shatter. Enduring the pain, I got back up.
我々の力量の差は先ほどのでよく理解できたはずですが。いいでしょう。ならば今しばらくはお付き合いいたします。
While clutching my kodachi, I assumed my stance before performing an all-out charge towards Amagiri. However, he evaded my attack with no effort. I couldn't let one swift dodge deter me. I muttered this to myself and I started to swing once, twice, and then thrice at him. However, Amagiri's elegant technique moved him out of the path of my blade like splitting the path of water.
Chizuru does do a fight. Kinda. She's trying.
No matter how many times I charged and slashed at him, there was no way my blade would connect with him. Then finally... I hadn't seen his leg move until it slammed into my arm with the force of a cannonball. Immediately, the pain was so overwhelming it felt as if time had stopped. I could no longer hold my kodachi and it clanged as it fell to the floor. My hands clasped the area where he kicked me and my knees fell to the floor. No, I had to get up. My brain screamed at me to move, to pick up my sword and fight, but the roar of pain drowned it out.
勝負あったようですね。悪く思わないでください。すぐ楽になれるよう、一撃であの世へ送ってあげましょう。
Help!
I'm sorry, Hijikata, I thought to myself. You said to protect Kondo. You told me to survive. But in the end, I couldn't do anything right. I squeezed my eyes shut as the tears slid down my cheeks and waited for the blow to fall.
おい、どうしてそこで諦めちまうんだ。新選組の大使なら最後の最後まで生き延びて敵を出し抜くことだけを考えろ。
That voice. It couldn't be. My head shot up just in time to see Hijikata leap through the air and land a sword blow on Amagiri's arm.
君は
What up, Hijikata? Welcome back.
甲府で戦う相手は新政府軍だけかと思ってたが、ついでに鬼退治させられる羽目になるとは思わなかったぜ。
Right? How dare he? Just fucking unfair is what that is.
先日の風間との戦闘から何も学び取っていないのですか。君たち羅刹はまがいものの鬼です。それがいくら力をつけたところで本物の鬼にかなうはずがない。
そりゃやってみなきゃわからねえだろう。剣術三倍弾って知ってるか。刀を取った敵を都市空拳で倒すにゃ相手の3倍の実力が必要なんだ。
どほ
う。あくまでも修羅の道を歩み続けますか。いいでしょう。相手をしてあげます。
He gave Hijikata a short, polite bow and dropped himself easily into a ready stance.
Oh god, they're just gonna make me keep reading the name of that fucking sword. I should have known, and I really should have practiced.
Hijikata's Izumi no Kami Kanesada flickered through the air, little more than a streak of silver. Amagiri blocked with one hand and dodged away from the flickering blade. Before Hijikata could react, Amagiri's foot drove itself into his stomach.
Rude.
Hijikata's face twisted in pain and he staggered back a step. Perhaps it was his fury-born strength, or perhaps it was simply adrenaline, but he surged back and leapt toward Amagiri. His sword leapt forward to bury itself in Amagiri's chest. Blood spurted out, splashing across Hijikata's face. He jerked back, pulling his sword free. No sooner was it out than the wound began to close.
そういや、鬼ってのはすぐに傷が治っちまうんだった。心臓をつかなきゃ殺せねえってのも面倒なこった。
Hijikata's like, oh, this fight's on hard mode? Cool.
His sword shone with fresh blood.
だがあんたの動きはもう見切ったぜ。勝てねえ相手じゃねえ。
Drenched in blood, Hijikata looked more like a monster than a human being. His eyes were wide and hungry. There was something terrifying and inhuman about his expression as he whipped his sword through the air. Amagiri leapt back, Hijikata's sword almost catching his fingers as he did so. Jabs and parries, feints and counterfeints. The battle flowed between them like a living thing, its changes moving too fast for any mortal eyes to track. Neither man showed any sign of tiring as they dodged and attacked in ways that would have been unthinkable to any human. Even in the middle of that maelstrom of death and violence, I could see Hijikata smiling. The smell of blood hung heavy in the air, and his grin spoke of a fury's lust for death.
まさか私と互角に渡り合える羅刹が存在したとは予想外でした。その比類なき力、一体何に使うつもりです？
Kick your ass, probably.
何言ったと大切なもんを守るために決まってるだろう。力を手に入れてって思う理由なんて。
Oh, damn. Well, that's cool. Hijikata's such good, though.
大切なもの。君にとっては徳川幕府ですか？
そうじゃねえ。もっと別の幕府とは比べ物にならねえくらい大きくて大切なもんだ。
Huh.
Hamagiri closed his eyes and was silent. What had gotten into him? Why had he stopped fighting? This was the perfect time to strike. I reached down slowly and picked up the sword I'd dropped only minutes before. I began to move forward when a hand on my shoulder stopped me.
Oh. Hey, Saito, what's up?
But Hijikata is going to...
I know, Chizuru's like, I want to fight! I'll do a stab! Let me stab!
What?
鬼である我々は本来人の世界に関わるべきではない。羅刹となった君も歴史の表に出てはいけない生き物です。
ああ、そりゃ分かってる。俺は別に歴史に名を残してとか大それた望みは抱いちゃいねえ。
Well, Hijikata, I have bad news for you. They don't stop at history books, I'm afraid.
分かっているのなら、あとは君に任せます。
Right?
なんだと？
風間は我が強く気ぐらいの高い鬼だ。以前屈辱を味わわせた君を絶対に許しはしないでしょう。
Oh dear.
君が勝つ可能性は低い。ですがそれでも守りたい何かがあるというのなら、守るためのその力、大切に使ってください。
Yeah, that's basically Amagiri. He's like, well, he's your problem now. Oh god, I hope they keep that. When Hijikata drags Kazuma for, what he does. It's very good.
In his own stoic way, Hijikata looked as confused as I felt. Could Amagiri be trusted? What were his true intentions?
そしてもう一つ、君に伝えておかなければならないことがあります。
You know, for a dude who showed up a few minutes ago and was ready to murder Chizuru, you're being awfully helpful now.
羅刹の力は決して神仏からの授かり物ではない。人並み以上の腕力、敏捷性、そして驚異的な回復力。それはすべて君の体に秘められたもの。本来数十年かけて使い果たしてゆくはずの力を借りているに過ぎません。
My hands flew to my mouth. By borrowing, did he mean that when Hijikata used the speed and strength of a fury, he was picking away at his future? His life?
力を使えば使うほど残りの寿命が短くなっちまうってことか。
そういうことです。
なるほど。話がうますぎると思ったんだ。ま、薩長と殺し合いやってんのに残りの寿命もクソもねえからな。それぐらいどうってことねえよ。
では私はもう行きます。
ちょっと待ってくれ。一つ聞かせてほしいんだ。
何でしょ
う。俺を見逃しちまっていいのか。このまま放っておいたら俺はきっとあの風間ってやつを殺すことになるぜ。
Hey, Twilight.
君に倒されるならばその程度の男だということでしょう。我ら鬼は情でつながっているわけではない。
Wow. So this is the route where Amagiri is just fucking done with Kazuma's shit. Like 150% done. He quits. Fuck that guy.
Then, with a last polite nod, he disappeared into the night.
Yeah, Chizuru did a whole fight against Amagiri by herself.
His enemy gone at last, Hijikata slumped and took a long, deep breath. Hijikata, are you all right?
なんともねえ。それより近藤さんはどうした？
Yeah, that's pretty much it, Anna.
局長ならあちらに。
Hijikata nodded and ran over to the chief.
近藤さん、無事か？どこか怪我してねえか？
He looked as if he had seen a ghost. Hijikata stood before him, his white hair and red eyes bright in the moonlight.
Oh no, I don't think he told Kondo.
A fury.
トシ、その姿。
Hijikata started and then looked away, almost guiltily. Kondo stared at him for a moment before asking in a soft, stunned voice.
なったのか。羅刹に。
まあな。しょうがねえよ。これも新選組を勝たせるためだ。
Hijikata, buddy.
For a moment he sounded very composed, but as I peered closer, I realized that he was desperately avoiding Kondo's gaze. He couldn't bear to look his friend in the eye. We were silent for several moments, and when the first raindrop hit me, it took me by surprise.
おっと、降り出してきたか。さっさと江戸に戻って体勢を立て直さねえとな。
Soji's off in Osaka or Edo somewhere, sick in bed, and we'll probably never see him again.
Right. Come on, Kondo, we have to hurry.
He drank it voluntarily while still in good health. He just chugged it because he was, like, not able to beat Kazuma and would have gotten trashed in that fight. But he was still standing.
I turned to make sure Kondo was following me, but he simply stood there, as if he'd forgotten how to walk.
Yeah, Soji is also fuck this cravat. Soji's is interesting because his outfit still retains a lot of Japanese sensibilities. Like, he was not willing to go all the way into Western attire. He kind of decided, fuck that. But he did cut his hair.
Kondo? Is something wrong? It began to rain harder, and still Kondo didn't move. Rain ran down his cheeks to his chin. Or were they tears?
Okay, this is funny to me because Kondo's voice actor played Mustang in the original Full Metal Alchemist anime. So it's funny, but it also makes me cry. Anyway. It's a terrible day for rain.
Kondoさん、いきなり何を言い出すんだ。誰もあんたのせいだなんて思ってねえよ。どんな名軍師だって様式化された軍を相手にして勝つことなんざできねえ。俺だって賭博心の戦いじゃ源さん山崎を死なせちまってるんだ。負けちまったのはしょうがねえ。大事なのはこれからどうやって勝負をひっくり返すかってことだろう。それに俺は別に羅刹になったことを後悔なんてしてねえよ。
Alright, Twilight, happy lurking.
むしろ人間をはるかに超えた力を手に入れられて、それはあんたのために役立てられる。嬉しくてしょうがねえさ。
Rain poured down their faces. Surely it was my imagination. But for a moment, it almost looked as though Hijikata was crying. Kondo stared at him for a long moment, then finally drew himself up. Something in his voice told me that even he didn't quite believe that. Ow.
And thus the tragedy train begins truly. But hey, we did a fight. That was pretty cool. All right. And that's actually like a perfect place to stop for the night. We got through chapter 1. So we're gonna back off over here. We have gotten one whole CG, and I need to remember how to hide the thing. There we go. So good! Alright, let's kill this and head to the bye-bye screen. That sword scene was so good. Ugh, the feels. Whoops, that's the BRB screen. This route is feeling a bit better than I remember it. So I don't know. It's hitting some more interesting emotional beats. Maybe that's just because I'm more invested in the history now than I was the first time I played. I don't know. Also, I feel like some of this stuff is newly added. I don't remember it from the original. But anyway, tomorrow We will be back into Psychedelica of the Ashen Hawk. I don't remember where we left off. I never remember where we leave off in that one because it's like basically just a collection of vignettes the entire fucking time. Sometimes we get a chapter as a treat. It's structured so weird, but I don't hate it. It's really entertaining and lovely. It's just confusing to follow the content sometimes.
In any case, friends, if it is early where you are, have a lovely day. If it is late where you are, go get some sleep and have a lovely day then. And until next time, have no chill in the things that bring you joy.
Like cool samurai sword vow things. Gosh, that was so good.